during this night, because there are much more important topics tonight. So just briefly, our topic tonight is like designer-developer relationship a bit. So we will talk about this kind of important question. What I wanted to say to you is that actually, without developers, there will be no user interfaces. Our job as designers will be like useless. So this development part, I'm sure you also have quite a lot of stories, how you communicated with developers and how they fucked up your designs and how unsuccessful it was to, because of the developers, your product wasn't good. I think that this is quite a common story nowadays, and you know, you can like create different processes to fix this. You can also create like different methods, but the key here is communication. Now, tonight we will have two speakers. Our first speaker, Balázs, will talk about basically a bit about everything regarding development, so backend, frontend, and the goal of his talk, I think that he will talk about the goal of his talk. And after that, where is our other speaker? Laci will talk about Figma. Everyone loves Figma. Figma in sense of Figma development view, which means that what do you think how effective development view is for developers? I think that, yeah. So this question will be answered by László. And also, so the meetup will take around, each talk will take around 20 minutes. After that, you will be able to ask questions. The whole meetup will take around 1.5 hours. So it's likely that we will finish at 8. Still, you can stay and discuss and have a time for networking as well. And with this, have fun, and I will hand over the mic to Zoltán, who is the leader of the IBM Budapest Lab design team.
Thank you, Csongor. Welcome, everybody. I'm just here to say just a few words because they forced me to do so. So first of all, welcome. It's so great to see such a large audience here tonight. I think the topic is going to be relevant and exciting for all of us because we as designers, researchers, product people, we work with a lot of developers every day. So we are at IBM Budapest Lab right now. I think I see a lot of familiar faces. We have a really nice and talented design team here in-house. Some of them sitting right here right now. So after the meetup, you'll have a chance to chat with them as well. And I could speak for hours how we work with developers, but that's not why I'm here. I'll tell you one story though how we work, and then I talked to a lot of people recently, and one thing that comes up in those conversations is people would ask me why I enjoy being at IBM. I've been here for 7 years now, by the way. And my number one response to that is usually I enjoy my role right now at IBM as a designer is because my manager is a designer, and my manager's manager is a designer. And you know, it's just great to be part of an organization where even the executives speak the same language. So when I talk to my manager, he has the designer background, and you know, we have the shared vocabulary. When I talk to my manager's managers, he's a designer as well, so we have the shared vocabulary. Coincidentally, my manager's manager happens to be here right now, and he's about to give us a talk about how we do designer and developer collaboration within IBM. So with that introduction, let me introduce you Bill Grady, our Director of Design.
US date. It's my first day ever in Budapest, so forgive me for my pronunciation. Thought I'd try a little bit. US date. My name is Bill Grady, and it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you here to IBM tonight. We recognize that it's your evening and you've chosen to spend it with us at our facility. And it's so important for us to participate in the design community in Budapest and be part of this community, give back to this community and share what we have, share our space, share our knowledge. And it's a gift for you all to be here tonight that we can share with you. starting with this sort of provocative concept that ideas, I mean, I've got a lot of creatives here, but I would argue that ideas are easy. As a designer, the hard part is convincing a group of people to build the thing that we've come up with. But that's what makes us designers. We're not satisfied, we're not excited or impressed or done until we see the users of our product having a great experience with it. Really, that's not much different than any organization or any job. If you're a nonprofit, you have to convince people to donate to your nonprofit and give their time. If you're a politician, you have to convince people to vote for your bill. It's what makes anyone in any profession really great at what they do. I like to think that if you're just creating an artifact, you're not a designer, you're an artist. It's convincing a group of people to build something that makes you a designer. So let me share a story from earlier in my career. Perhaps you can relate to it. I was working in many time zones away from my developers. My developers were in Taiwan. I was in New York at the time. We had language issues. We were many time zones apart. I would send over some designs. They would send something back. I would redline it. I would mark it up. I would write on it all the things that needed to be changed. I would send it back to them. They wouldn't quite understand it. They'd send it back to me. Weeks would go by, and finally we might get something done. But it was a very slow and ineffective way to work. It was not teaming. Has anyone else experienced something similar to this? Yeah. So at IBM, we recognized that this is so important, we've developed an entire methodology around it. We call this enterprise design thinking. And tonight I want to talk to you about the 3 keys of enterprise design thinking: hills, sponsored users, and playbacks. Now, I'm not going to tell you we're perfect. I've got a lot of people here in the audience who are part of this. We still have work to do to perfect it, but I will tell you that we've set organizational OKRs around this. So we have key performance metrics, and I can tell you that in the 4th quarter of 2023, 100% of the epics developed in IBM Cloud had what we call hills. These are customer value statements. We'll talk about this. And 97% of the epics that we developed had a sponsor user or someone who we were co-creating with. So we're measuring this and we're making distinct progress on it. What's a hill? Well, a hill is something that aligns a team around a user outcome. It's really important that we don't dictate what the end will be. We don't dictate the technology or how we build it. But the team of developers, product managers, designers, marketers, sellers, they start off with a statement, a simple statement that helps align them around what the value is that someone will get from the thing that we're building. And we put this in writing for everyone to understand, and it helps along the way. Have you ever been in a situation where months go by and you're reviewing some design and you realize the team wasn't aligned around what it is they're actually building or what they're trying to accomplish? Maybe they had some idea of it, but they were slightly misaligned. This puts in writing exactly what that team is trying to do. So let me share an example with you. One example, forgive me, it's an American up here, but I'm calling from before my era. This was a John F. Kennedy quote. He set a challenge. He said, "I believe that this nation," that's the who, "should commit itself to achieving the goal," that's the what, and the wow, landing a man on the moon and returning this person safely to Earth. And this is also a time when they meant men and women, or maybe, anyway, let's not dig into that. But they set a clear goal, and it rallied an entire country around meeting an audacious goal, and it was measurable and it was specific. Now, what does that look like in my team? You know, it's still pretty ambitious for us, but we set clear goals around our persona. Who's the person who benefits from this thing? What is it they can do? And then what's a very specific and audacious wow? What would make a customer say, wow, I need this in my life? Well, in this case, 72 hours while ensuring regulatory compliance, reducing latency, and adhering to data sovereignty within the EU boundaries. These are things that our customers would be wowed by, would make them interested in this feature that we're building. We've got a whole team rallied around that, and when we're done, maybe this is the most exciting part, is we can say whether or not we've accomplished this goal. And you know what? Say it's 96 hours instead of 72 hours. Okay, we're making progress, and we're able to say what we actually accomplished as a group of designers, developers, and product managers. So to take action on this, I'd ask yourself to consider How is what you're working on delivering client value? Do you have that statement written down? Is your whole team aligned around it? If you asked anyone on your team what the client value is for the thing they're building, could they tell you? And it would be the same as the other person if you asked them too. There's real power in that. It's simple, it's basic, but I bet a lot of people in this audience aren't part of a team that's doing this. It's why we've set a goal to make sure 100% of development efforts have it. And then that second one, we talked about the importance of measuring success. So within that hill, there has to actually be a measurable thing. And I'll share with you, I don't always, because it's not super popular to talk about metaphors, but some of this comes from military. The reason it's called a hill is because it's commander's intent. Some of you might have read about commander's intent. The idea is to set an objective for a team. Don't dictate how they'll do it, but tell them the hill they need to take. And you know that along the way, they're going to have to adapt and change, but you're empowering them to find out how to do that on their own and take that hill because we're all aligned around what it will look like. What does the success metric look like? What does the outcome look like? The second item here is sponsor users. So this is about actually finding people who can co-create with you. You know, I talked to a team tonight that's designing medical equipment. They're not doctors, but they have to understand what doctors need. If you're designing for pilots, you're not expected to go get your pilot's license, but you have to understand what the pilot needs. In this case, it's about working side by side with the people who are using your product and then regularly checking in with them at each stage of the process. Show them that sketch on a napkin. Ask for their feedback. Show them the low-fidelity concept. Ask for their feedback. Ask them to test the high-fidelity concept. And if you're iterating along the way, chances are you're much more likely to hit the mark when you launch the first time instead of launching and then only finding out later that it's missed the mark. So we really challenge ourselves to identify early and upfront who the individuals are from different organizations, and in an ideal case, you might find some on the fringe. Find that user who's the 95th percentile use case. What do they need? Find the user in the other 95th percentile. What do they need? And then you can start to understand your market need, not just what a few customers need. The action item here is simply asking yourself, who is your sponsor user? You know, I would challenge you right now to think about who you're co-creating with. Who's helping you understand if you're going to meet the mark when you launch? Have they validated? Now, tying back to the first one we talked about, the hills, a powerful, simple motion is to take that hill to your customers and ask them, if we launched this, if we delivered this, would it be exciting for you? Is this a wow? And they might tell you, oh, I don't care if it's in 72 hours. In fact, because of this EU regulatory compliance, weeks is fine. That's the kind of questions you need to be drilling into. And have they given you feedback in the last month or quarter? So that's hills and sponsor users. This is a crash course, by the way, and I'll tell you how to find out more. And then the third is playbacks. So playbacks bring a whole organization together. Bring your executives with your most junior designers together. Everyone's ideas are valid. Challenge yourself to ask a broad swath of the organization. The developers are there, the designers are there, the sellers are there. Everyone's ideas are valid. We have a term we've coined called swoop and poop. That's when you haven't shown the executive swoops in and poops all over the idea when you're well down the line. You can avoid that by having these playbacks more regularly to make sure the whole team is aligned around what's being built. I would recommend, at the minimum, you're doing sprint retros. That's one way you can call a playback. But we have really rigorous or like rituals. The way you change culture is through rituals. And by holding something like a playback that everyone knows, this is the playback 0, you all have to be here. This is your chance to give feedback, or you're not going to get to add that feedback later because we had the playback and we're moving on. That's how you use these to really speed the development organization to outcomes. I'll share an example with you. So there's something that we call the Design and User Experience Review. This is an opportunity to bring together that cross-disciplinary team, and we step through the product phase by phase. We start with, what is it like to discover this product? What is it like to learn about this product? To try it, to buy it, to get into regular use. And with this whole, this is maybe 16 people, some of them are bigger, we have some people reviewing them on this call, but the power in this is to develop empathy with the whole team to see and feel the issues firsthand. The pain points, it's not enough to just put them in that file and send them to Taiwan. If they're in this meeting, they understand what needs to be changed because they feel it and they see it. So I just want to explicitly call out to you, who's in this meeting? The cross-disciplinary team is in this meeting. So we're stepping through and they're feeling it and they're understanding it. And then we log a bunch of issues afterwards and they understand, oh yeah, okay, GitHub, that was the thing that I saw in the meeting and we understand why it's important and we'll prioritize it. To take action, ask yourself, when was your last playback? And did you actually pause to invite people who might be able to improve upon what you're doing? Maybe someone who you normally wouldn't invite, who would have an idea from another part of the organization. Have you invited maybe that executive who you're a little afraid to invite, but you probably need to have there, or they might mess things up later down the line? Invite all those folks who can benefit from learning about your ideas and your work and who can give you feedback to improve that work, and that will be a successful playback. So to conclude, Hills, sponsored users, playback, these are the keys to align a team of developers and designers along the way around the user's needs. And I'll share with you in just a minute, I'll share a QR code that you can use to actually take our full course on this. It's free to everyone, and I would love to invite you to take that and earn the badge. Credly actually offers a badge in this design thinking course that we've developed. But first, let me share with you, sort of to sum up why we do this. Why is that design and user experience review successful? It's because humans, they don't respond to a list of grievances. You can't send a list of problems to your developer and say, hey, this isn't very good, I need you to fix it. They're going to say, it's not important to me, and I have a long list of other things I need to do. So something that we say at IBM is that as designers, we need to have empathy for our users, yes, but empathy for each other first. We're designers, have empathy for your teammates, understand how to bring them along in the process with you by using this methodology. Now, just want to share something that I'm very proud of. We use these methodologies imprecisely. We're always getting better, but I'm proud to have said that we earned a number of International Design Awards from our team last year by using these methods. And these methods are available to you. So it's a 2-hour online course. Is the first, we have several badges, but the first and simplest is our 2-hour online course, the Enterprise Design Thinking Practitioner course. It's a great way to dive into this and learn more if you're interested. And if you're really curious about it, if you want to spend a little more than 2 hours on it, then let me invite you to take the next step. Because we're hiring 12 designers here in Budapest, 5 user researchers and 7 designers, a mix of seniority. We are hiring a manager, as well as people who are early in their careers, people who are more experienced in their careers. We're looking for everything to build a really robust team here in Budapest. That will grow our Budapest team from 16 to 28. I think we'll get a couple more after that. So we're really excited about what the team here at IBM Budapest is doing. I'm going to continue to invest in it. Thank you to all of our IBM designers and researchers here. We can grow anywhere in the world, but we're choosing to grow here in Budapest because of the amazing talent we see in this community. We're happy to be a part of it, and we invite you to be part of our team as well. Thank you. I think we're going to switch the laptops now, is that right?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. It was a very insightful talk. So I hope I'm a bit less nervous than in the beginning. So the next speaker will be Balázs Almády, who will talk about this kind of overview of backend and front-end development. And the goal of his talk, again, you will find it out at the end, but he will definitely answer the questions. Do designers need to code? That's cool, right? But until we hand over the mic to him, it's quite hot here, so you can take some time and get some water from the kitchen if you need it.
Should I answer? Is the Q&A later?
I can have it now. You can have it now.
People are milling. I have some questions. I'd be happy to answer some questions.
I can give this one back to you.
Thank you.
Then you can ask questions from me.
Maybe
I will give this one.
Thank you. So the question is it worth 16 people sitting in the same meeting for one purpose instead of smaller rapid meetings with more, flow and purpose?
Thank you. Great question. The question is, that's an expensive meeting. You got 16 people on the, and by the way, we go at least an hour and a half on those, sometimes 2.5 hours on those. Is it worth that? Well, I really swear by them. What I find is, I believe that 2.5 hours has the potential to save 2.5 weeks or 2.5 months, right? Because, and perhaps even more significantly, has the power to prevent us from launching something in a market that's not going to be a hit. You only have one chance to make a first impression. So we typically hold these a few weeks before we launch something, and we look at the code in development, and we walk through it, and we'll log 60, 70 bugs, and occasionally we'll stop ship if we're not satisfied with the user experience. And so this is our opportunity to bring the whole group together and say, this is our chance, what needs to be improved? And I believe that, if you think about an important new feature that we're going to make a big splash about, if we can have just 3 more customers who have a great first experience, advocate to others, choose to buy it, that pays for itself. Great question. Thank you. Please.
Just another aspect.
Oh, could you introduce yourself?
Guy,
Everyone knows.
Yeah, I'm an iOS developer. I'm not even a designer. I just have 14 years of experience in the field.
Tremendous.
But another question is about accessibility, which is a very important question. Do you check your product with the different accessibility options as well? Do you review them?
Thank you.
Please?
Great question. The answer is yes, and. So most of our accessibility is tested through an automated process before this. So we have the automation in place to confirm that we meet all our goals for automation, screen readers, et cetera. But as part of this review, the team is testing those and logging the issues that they find related to that. Yeah, good question. I would invite you also, if it's an area that interests you, I shared one resource with you, which is our badge. We have also free resources around that tester that I just mentioned. We make available free to the public. So if you're interested in testing our automation tools, I welcome you to go to ibm.com and check them out. You're welcome.
One more question, if there is any. Yes, please.
Sorry, can you share more about the collaboration process between product managers and devs and product designers or UX designers?
Share more with regards to what?
Share more about the collaboration process, because we talked about questions, but we don't talk about responsibilities and things like that.
That's interesting. So what are the responsibilities of a designer compared to the product manager and the developer, and how do those roles and responsibilities relate to each other? Thank you, good question. I like to think of it as 3 legs of a stool. So the 3 legs being design, development, and product management. The designer is responsible for the user. They represent the user. The developer is responsible for the technology and making it work. And the product manager is responsible for the business and achieving the business goals. These 3 legs of the stool should be in tension, and think about putting a rubber band on those 3 legs. There should be enough tension between them that there's really robust discussion. We need to step up and say, our user, who we're advocating for, they need this. And it may be a little bit in conflict with what the business needs or with what is easy to build. But it's important to push for what we need, and then we come to compromise. If you push too hard, the rubber band breaks. And we can't have that. But it's those 3 legs of the stool working together that make a successful product for the market. Thank you. I'll just close by sharing with you, I shared an anti-pattern. I shared my story early in my career when I was trying to send files, sending a Figma file and expecting someone just to understand it on their own isn't going to work. I'll share the opposite. What this is about tonight is about the best moments in our career. The moments when we're sitting side by side with the developer at the whiteboard. And I say, I've got an idea of something our user needs. And the developer says, Bill, that's crazy. But what if we did this? And they get engaged, and we start some back and forth, and we're actually collaborating. They're talking about what they can build. We're talking about what the user needs. And those are the best moments of a career, when you and your partners come together and you hash out something that's truly magical. That's what we live for. And then we ship it, and we get to see the satisfaction of our users enjoying it. So with the methods we'll talk about tonight, we want more of those moments in our careers. Thank you.
Let's see if this works. Okay. Hello everyone, I'm Balázs. I'm a full stack developer, usually, or based on whatever I do. And I thank Bill very much for this overview, because I think frameworks like these on enterprise level can help us quite a bit just to get closer, just to get the developers and the UX designers a bit closer. But I believe even then we might have communication issues, skill issues, and things like that that actually might be quite large an obstacle to overcome in the day-to-day work. And I would like to lessen it a bit if I can. Today I will talk about the basic structure of software, how developers are building it. I try to give you some overview on frameworks, libraries, languages, and all these strange things that we tend to talk about and like to talk about. And least but not last, I will talk a bit about how I think knowing all these technical stuff might help you design better applications. But first, let's do something that is quite familiar to you all. I think a little user research. Is there anyone here who worked with developers before? Okay. Is there anyone who understood almost everything they said? Okay. What about half of it? Okay. And now, please raise your hands if you think that you could build a great software if you understood your users as much as you understood your technology and developers. Developers don't count. Yeah, I think, yeah, we can see the results. Understanding, compassion for each other, empathy, they are all necessary for us to work together and build good software. And usually, I think UX designers spend a lot of time understanding their users, their stakeholders, but way less understanding their developers. Yeah, let's talk about software. Software, the world of software is layered, quite a bit like hell, unless we make it nice. So usually, let's hope it's not like hell. Yeah, software is layered all the way from the hardware that's doing the processing to the hardware that's showing out, us all the stuff that we need. Yeah, layers. I can give you some easy examples on layers. Layers that are very close to the hardware might do very simple, basic things from our perspective. For example, a layer just above the monitor might tell a single pixel how to behave, which color to shine. Just another layer above that will help us to create shapes, circles, squares, whatever. And another layer and another layer above will help us animate it, add new effects to it, and make something actually nice. And that's already 3 layers just to display stuff. And everything around is layered. I think everyone updated drivers before. They are the layers that are responsible for handling the different hardwares in our system. You all have an operating system, which is one large layer consisting of many smaller layers, coordinating everything that we do and coordinating all the other applications that we run. Whenever we are building a web application, there's a browser, pretty much another layer below it, and that one runs our web application, just another layer. Oh. No, it's, yeah, another button, yeah. Yeah, so traditionally, whenever we are building our own application, something that's not the operating system, something that's not a driver, but our application, what we are all working on, we separate it into 3 large layers: the front end, back end, and the database. I think, hopefully, you are all familiar with the front end part. This is the part that our users interact with, everything that they see. As such, its sole role is to display data to our users and to accept data from them through the various user input and format it so the backend can handle it. The backend is another layer, usually run, in a case of a web application, quite often it's far, far away on the other side of the internet from us. And this layer helps us communicate between the front-end layer and the... Oh, I have a laser? Yeah. the front-end layer and the database layer. And it processes all our data. It contains all the business logic, the domain logic that we need, automates processes, handles everything. This is basically the heart and brain of our application. And below it, there's a database, because we know everything is data-driven, especially software. And databases, thank God we don't have to spend time developing them. They are ready-made solutions by now, because data is pretty much the same, only the shape is different. And nowadays, we just take a database off the shelf and customize it and use it. Databases are used for storing data and retrieving it as efficiently as possible. Now you can say, oh, it's just 3 layers for your application. It's unfortunately not like that, because whenever we are working on a front end or back end, we usually separate it to other layers. We separate it to adapter layers, interface layers to talk to each other. Whenever we want to do something that's risky, we add an anti-corruption layer. So all kinds of technical layers exist, and we put it all the way into these big ones. And even the communication dam is separated into 7 layers, because we like layers. Yeah, layers are almost always technical representations and technical separations of code, but components can be domain-based or technical-based separations as well. They are actually fairly close to what you guys do when you are designing a design system or a UI component system. Those components that you design pretty much almost always translate into one-to-one another component that's coded by a developer. But we don't stop there. We also like separating components into smaller components, subcomponents. So we don't have to duplicate code. We can make everything smaller, make everything, we don't like repeating ourselves, neither in meetings nor in code. So we separate things into small components that are reusable, and reuse them we do. Yeah, I talked about separating code into layers and components. This sounds good, but what the hell is code? What am I even talking about? And what are languages? Why are developers so worked up on them? Well, languages are basically just what they say, languages, an interface between the human and the computer doing the work. Languages define as commands, interactions on how to tell the computer to do something, how we can interact with data, how we can describe our graphical interfaces or other structures. In the slide, you can see the same algorithm written in two fairly different languages. If you can see, that one is like a block, that one is like a pyramid. They are completely different, just looking at them. And not just like that, the logic behind them is quite different. They are in different paradigms. And as such, it's actually hard for developers to understand some other languages, some codes written in other languages. Many languages are familiar to each other, just like in real human languages, but almost always they are fairly large differences because they were made to handle different stuff. Some languages were made for the front end, some languages were made by mathematicians, some languages were made to create large enterprise servers. Yeah. Okay, I said everything I wanted. So code is just what we write, our instructions to the computer to do stuff. But nowadays, we don't really work just with simple code. We don't start coding, oh, let's do this from scratch, because that's a lot of work. And nowadays, we are building fairly large systems with cores that are almost always common. And common stuff, we don't like repeating ourselves, so we separate it. We put it into frameworks. Frameworks help us do what pretty much everyone does. So, for example, displaying stuff on the front end. Frameworks are fairly interesting because they work in one language, but they sometimes feel like it's an almost different one because they have their own conventions, structures, design patterns. So all the time when you are working in a language and start working in a framework, it's also, again, a whole new world. Yeah. We can see three popular front-end frameworks, Angular, React, Vue. I think you've heard at least one of them during your work already. And changing frameworks is either very, very hard or downright impossible once you start a project, because everything is based upon them. So you have to scrap it all to start again. And they are solving common problems. Now, libraries and packages, they are similar. They are also code made by someone else, sitting on a server and waiting for us to pull it down and reuse. But they almost always have very specific goals in mind, and they impose on us less constraints. For example, we can use D3GS to display very nice interactive graphics and data visualizations on our website. We almost always use Luxon or a similar library to handle dates and calendars, because date handling is shit and very, very hard. And we always use one of these libraries to communicate to the database as well. Yeah. And libraries are also fairly hard to change unless architectural concerns and architectural techniques were applied to make it easy. That's what anti-corruption layers are for, but you have to design them, you have to think about them, and that's quite often forgotten or just skipped because we are rushing, and then libraries are staying with us again. Let me show you a very easy, very basic example of web application. On the front end, I think you all heard about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, the triumvirate of front-end languages, pretty much the mandatory free front-end languages. HTML and CSS might be good for you because they are fairly easy and do stuff that you do in Figma. HTML helps us define the structure of our web page. It lists everything, all the elements, groups them into logical structure, and creates the skeleton of our page. But if you've seen an HTML page without just in itself, it's ugly. We don't like ugly stuff. So that's what we use CSS for, a language to style our web page, to define how an element looks, where it appears on the layout, and how it's animated. Yeah, so if we know three languages, just three languages, we can start working on the front end. Now let's add the framework, because we don't like repeating ourselves and doing stuff all over again. So let's use Angular. That's a JavaScript framework, so we can use it. Let's say we are displaying data and dates, so we use D3GS and Luxon. Let's hope we are lucky as a developer in this project, because the backend is also written in JavaScript. Quite often not the case. We can use Express, which is a JavaScript framework, to do our backend logic, and also, again, use even the same libraries to handle dates. And since we are handling data on the front end, we might as well output it to Excel. So we plug in another library which helps us write Excel files. And we need data, so we add an SQL database, a Postgre, which is, to communicate with it, we need another language, SQL. So even in a very, very simple web application, in which, let's say, we are only displaying some data with proper dates handling time zones and outputting them to Excel tables, we need 4 languages, 2 frameworks, and at least 3 libraries. So that's just everything that we need to learn to make a very basic web app. And nowadays, nothing is basic. I think you might have heard the new craze, microservices. Microservices is just when we decide that one backend is not enough and start separating it, like components, into multiple backends. Let's say a dozen, more dozens, or whatever. Let's add a completely different database under each of them. Let's do half of them in Java, half of them in JavaScript, some in Go, because Go is cool. And then we have a system with many, many languages, many, many frameworks, which the developers somehow have to handle. And we can also separate front-end into micro-frontends now, even nicer. Yeah, but why am I talking about all this technical stuff to you? Why does this matter? Because in the end, Bill also mentioned that whatever design you dream of, we need to make it into reality. And what makes it into reality is technology, it's code, and what we work on. And all the frameworks, all the languages have some specializations, what they are very good for, limitations, what they are not really that good for, and these might actually affect your UX experience and whatever you design or you should design. one of the ways it can actually affect you, or you can actually affect it if you learn some coding or technical stuff, is predicting delays and errors. Because all the communication that we have between components can fail. A front-end application or a front-end layer of an application is actually run on your computer, on the user's computer in the client browser. That means it's on your laptop, and the backend is somewhere in the cloud, IBM cloud, whatever cloud, doing its calculations. There's the whole wide internet between them. And the whole wide internet tends to be slow, tends to fail, tends to do stuff that we can't really predict, just have to handle somehow. And we are handling it with HTTP response codes, for example, out of which the most notorious one, I think you've all seen, 404. That just means I can't even find the backend server or the page on it. Please tell me what to do. And 400 just means I don't even know what the front end is saying. Please say something that means something. So HTTP response codes help developers to do communication with very, very quick communication between the front end and the back end, so all the layers. And if you have an understanding of how the software is built, where are connections on, that are over the internet, how large a database you are working with. Because if you are working on a database where there is a table with hundreds, thousands, or millions of rows, that will be a bit slower to query than a very, very small one. So you can almost always calculate in some loading time and plug in a loader to the website, to the front end, because you know that it's going to take some time. And you can prepare for errors, and the website won't look very, very stuck, yeah. Understanding how developers work and how code evolves also might help you a bit. Because when developers start separating into components, we are very cool. Okay, we can do this. Let's do the component that you designed. Let's separate it into subcomponents. Oh, that one is the same. It's another card. Let's make it the same component. Okay, then the UX designer adds a new feature for one of the cards. Okay, we can add an exception, and then another, and then another. And then the developer has a dilemma. Should it be the same card component with lots of exceptions, options, and other things that you can toggle, or make it into a different component? And this is very hard to predict whether which type of change we need. So if we go the wrong direction, later on we have to refactor it. I will talk about what refactoring soon. But later on we have to work again on it because our guess was wrong. So if we have a clear understanding of what that component is supposed to do, and what Bill showed us, have an understanding of how our designers think, how our users think, then we might have a chance to estimate or guesstimate what it's going to be in the end, how it's going to be separated in the very end. There is also the other direction when the developer is new, or a new developer is plugged in a project and have to do something very quickly, and they can't find the component because it's not the usual name or something like that, or just can't find it. And we make a new one, and a new one, and maybe another one. And then we have lots of components, and whenever you hear that a developer says, we need 2 days to refactor this, that means that we screwed up either separating it into multiple components or making a lot of the components that should be just one. And that we have to rewrite everything to have the same functionality, but actually be understandable and developable. Because whenever we don't have time for this, it's going to take longer and longer time to understand which components we have to work on and what we actually want to do and have to do. Yeah. I think the only two languages that a developer, that a UX designer needs to know are HTML and CSS. And the reason is they are fairly easy to learn and almost the same as Figma. HTML is just a Figma structure on the left, and CSS is just that window that pops in with all the properties and layouts on the right. That's HTML, CSS, and you have the view on the... it's the same. It's almost like you are painting a picture and we are writing a novel about it. You can actually talk about it all the time. Why not just write it and understand how it's written? I think if you understand how it's written, maybe you can talk about it better and also figure out what is actually feasible. I think Bill also mentioned feasibility. Sometimes design is just not feasible or not feasible in a range of time. And estimating it, understanding what we can do and what we can do easily is actually quite possible even with just the basics of understanding HTML and CSS concepts. I think understanding the box model, layouting properties, and basic styling properties will help you along this line quite a lot. Also, understanding a bit advanced techniques for CSS might bring us to a new era where we actually have better responsivity and better responsive websites, because I really hate 8 and 12 grids, which designers really love. But in the past 5-6 years, there were so many tools to make cooler stuff, make everything size fluidly, behave in wonderful ways. Just no one knows how that we can design it. So I think CSS and modern CSS can bring us very cool new designs where even you are less constrained. So I think it could help a lot. And HTML, understanding how HTML is built will help a lot in understanding accessibility concerns. Because for disabled users, they are not looking at your wonderful UI, they are actually looking at more closely the HTML with their screen readers. And without understanding that you also have to design for that, it could be a jumble. And the developers have to help the designers, and it's going to be a lot more iterations to add accessibility. And last but not least, communication. I think everyone knows, if you know more technical lingo, you will understand developers a bit more. And I don't really want to talk about this more because it's so trivial. Yeah, and in summary, I think understanding just HTML and CSS and the large overview of how software is built will help you a lot. And I really don't think that any designer should code, but I think you should know how to program. And also, if you think your designs are also viewed by developers, so you might as well add a developer persona to this all the time, because we are also users. We try to understand what we are doing, so we have needs and everything. And that was all from me. Thank you very much.
Just stay a bit. So it's question time. We have time for 2 questions or something. Any questions?
Thank you. Hi, I have a question because I'm a developer as well, and so from the takeaway that I get is that there seems to be like a problem of communication between UX designers and developers in developing the product. And the question here is like, how do we become?
No. Maybe it's like power down.
I can also talk without it.
Could you try, please?
Do you hear me?
How do we become fluent in each other's languages? Or?
Let me read.
At what point would you like to be involved as a developer if you could choose in that process? Would you say
Yeah, I think many of the developers are not really people-oriented, or at least most of us are a bit lower level on empathy. So I think almost none would like to do user research and would be a participant in this. But once you start building it and you actually have something, I think bringing it to the users and have a UX designer mediating between the users and the developers might help. And from my experience, whenever I was being handed some Figma file, I was like, okay, how to even, which way to rotate it? So, yeah, or at least the first time whenever I saw any Figma on any project, it was like, how do I even read this? And I think when we are just handed artifacts like this, it's very, very hard because development is not a straightforward thing. It's not a factory pipeline. It's more like a craft, more like an art, usually. And I think things change. That's what Scrum is for. That's what Agile is for. We have whole methodologies designed around it, and our whole workflow is designed around change. But we are handed artifacts quite often from designers. And I think that's just gears rotating and then something plugged in that, oh, it should be like this. And the gears stop. You have to refactor everything. So I think whenever we are designing, okay, yeah. So whenever I was working with UX designers, I absolutely loved it when we had one-to-one sessions, thinking about it, when I can talk all about, okay, there is an accessibility concern here. Okay, we've got some responsivity. Look how cool I can make it. You made us two views, the small one and the big one. I can make it between and things like that. And it just felt good for me. And I could also see the shine on the UX designer's face that, oh, we are making it better. I designed it in two ways, and it's going to work in between. And I think that's worth collaborating, really. And I think it's worth collaborating.
I don't know, something is in your hand, I guess. Try it now.
I'm static. Okay, so I think it's really worth collaborating closely on all these, if you can. Yeah. Is this an answer?
Can I have a little bit more?
Sure.
So one of the most important things as a designer you can do is read the human interface guidelines. That should be your Bible. 99.4% of designers don't even know it exists. You should read it, you should memorize it, it should be your Bible. And even though you're not a developer, you should start playing just very surface level building blocks that you are designing for. If you have no idea how those work, until the basic level, your work is like painting. It's art. But you should just understand more the Lego blocks that you are utilizing. With this, you can create much more usable designs. That's actually an product, not something that you will discuss 3 hours long with the developer why it's not working.
Yeah. Let me tie in on the painting part, okay? Because it's really like painting, but I think if you are painting without knowing the technical details, so how perspective works and how the color, how the paint itself works that you are working with, watercolor blends differently than aquarelle. So if you are using different paints, you have to know a bit about them. Otherwise, your painting won't come out good the first time, the second time, the fourth. Or maybe then it's going to be good, but it will take more iterations. So I think it's going to shorten the cycles of development.
As a developer, how much UX experience or understanding of UX do you think you should have as a developer? if you start building your own project, you run into the same thing. And if you might have the best tech stack, but if your user experience is terrible, nobody's going to use your product. So how do you, what is your take on this?
Yeah, my take on it, I like UX stuff, so I tend to come to UX meetings when I come. So it's a bit biased. I think we should know at least the basics of UX stuff, visual hierarchy, some basic color, color theory, and things like that. I don't think we need to do all the little details, all the tiny things that will make something perfect. So it's like Pareto principle, 80-20. With just knowing visual hierarchy, basic color theme, and not to use Comic Sans, you will actually make a website that looks okay-ish, and the other 20% to actually make it really usable, really likable, really something. I think that is the UX designer's job.
Thank you so much, Balázs. It was very insightful. Cool. Our next speaker will be László Szűcs, and he will talk about another myth, which is about Figma developer mode. Is the developer mode creating fully ready front-end code, and do we still need front-end developers? You can take some water from the kitchen, and yes, we can. Okay, so 5-minute break.
I think it was dense enough that we need.
You think so? Cool. So everyone be back at 7:37.